low prices. Why do I want to lock a long-term contract, right? I'm not Walmart. I'm in and out. Make sense? So it's a function of that the inputs are not all the same. The output is electricity. That's a factual statement. Yes, sir.
So one of the big arguments for diversifying is there's too much volatility in the, especially the petroleum markets, right?
Some people, yeah, I mean, that's dependent upon, everybody's got an agenda,
Over
but
the
yes.
past 4 or 5 years lately,
Lately, yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, we haven't built a chemical plant in this country in, what, 30 years or so? A new one anyways.
I don't know. I'll
And
defer
they
to you.
haven't, it costs bukus of money and all this permitting just to expand the
Right.
existing facility and upgrade to the newest technology.
Right.
But a lot of that has to do with environmental concerns, and especially the environmentalist people on the left part of the spectrum of
Sure. Yeah, there are just some wackos out there.
which shows that
There are.
that energy is political. It's not apolitical. And solar and wind also. I mean,
It is. People want to make it political. They,
Right.
I mean, you take any argument, and I'm going to take a side, and you'll take the other side.
and
Not you.
wind's even having this problem right now in the Panhandle with the bats and the birds getting killed and such like that. And,
I've got a slide for you later.
Yeah.
It's a big myth. Not kidding.
I'm not concerned about it.
But, well, no, I am.
Evolution, right?
I was in the Corps Cadets. I was in the cavalry. Those are the right wing of the Corps. Believe me. I don't mean to, like, it's my opinion. Not everybody has to agree with it. But I just believe, and Wall Street will tell you, and much people much smarter than me at University of Chicago, is that if we expect to just recycle the same jobs over and over and over again, nothing will ever change. And we'll become more and more dependent on the same ideas and more dependent on the same resources. And when they run out, they run out. And so, ideally, I would like to kind of prepare for that day that they may not be there, or it becomes more expensive to get to those same resources. Resources is a variable word, but plug in whatever, any business line you want. The idea is that you've got some sort of cost over here, you got some output over here. There's a cost for that. That cost varies. So when I was in the fall of 1994, I was a freshman. My hair between now and then somehow disappeared. But somehow I cut it off and shaved it. And then I filled up in San Marcos, Texas, and gas was 78 cents a gallon. Do you believe it? It's crazy. So my point is that it's very hard to make these on uncertain, to make any sort of business decision. We have so much uncertainty. Wall Street and economics professors would call that a beta, and it's just a measurement of risk. And there's people that place bets on every side of that, each side, every day. You can do it on the futures market at Wall Street. You can go to the Chicago Board of Mercantile Exchange, and you can buy a futures contract on anything. But at the end of the day, I'm not saying they're one or the right or the other, but I am saying diversification lowers the overall cost, including nuclear, which I'm a big supporter of. Any more questions? All right.
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
When you start comparing natural gas, and back a couple of years ago when the price was actually like 13 per million BTU, that price was not held there for very much long, for not a long time. And actually, when that price was there, contracts were still being done for a lot lower price, just like oil is done today.
Short-term contracts, sure.
Yeah, just like oil is done today, even though it's at 80, 90 per day, every day, it's the contracts aren't done for those prices. So I just think maybe the basis of comparison, sometimes they're not on par.
Absolutely. It's very hard to compare these things. It's even hard, the closest comparison we can make for wind and solar is natural gas. But even wind and solar aren't the same, because wind has a different profile production than solar, and natural gas is a demand response. It's peaking. You can turn it on and off like a light, but you expose yourself to long-term risk volatility unless you lock in your commodity price. So unless you're going to be a natural gas producer and a power plant, it's very hard to make a apples to apples comparison. Anybody that does is either extremely brilliant or the opposite.
Once you, I believe, in one point that you can start making a comparison somewhat more directly is when you reach that price, the tipping price of a barrel of oil. Let's say a barrel of oil, because even though natural gas price is supposed to be correlated just on energy terms, like 1/8 of the price of a barrel of oil.
At one point, yeah, it was. Yeah, but not-
It's
not
supposed to
anymore.
be, just energy-wise.
Mhm.
At what point, in your opinion, for the price of oil, is it gonna tip over whereas the solar and the wind are not gonna need subsidies
I don't
or
know.
incentives?
I don't know. It depends upon the price of natural gas. And so in a utilities perspective, that's what y'all told me about the whiteboard. In a utilities perspective, so literally I graphed this today in a meeting, I can show you on my notebook. But College Station Utilities, they buy 50% of their power, they have base load. That's what, so that the lights come on, when we turn on, they make sure it's always there. And right now, believe it or not, their base load power is coal and wind. So as invariable as wind is, it's still actually predictable over the long term, believe it or not. That's something you don't hear often, that wind's predictable. It's factually, we have a PhD in atmospheric science from Princeton on staff, and all of his colleagues and many others will tell you the wind over the long term is predictable. But it's intermittent or variable, like your windshield wipers.
But it's variable and it's an acceptable risk because coal can be variable as well,
Right.
on demand.
But yeah, but coal's still expensive because it's expensive to cycle that power plant as compared to a peaker plant, a natural gas peaker plant.
Actually,
And I'm starting to reach the limit of my technical knowledge. So I'm gonna back up and not go too far there because you'll show how my GPA really wasn't that high. So my point though is, there's a risk or volatility to everything. And what the guys that, whether you're an engineer one day, you're gonna have to convince your boss to make an economic decision one day. So even though I'll hire you to come prove up my point and justify my theory, but my point is at the end of the day, it's important to understand not equally the access to the brain power to get, but also to boil it down quite simply. And what we came to today is that College Station Utilities has 50% of their load, their base load resource comes from coal and wind, and the other one, they have a load following contract. Load following contract means they have to go to the day-ahead market and predict the amount of energy you and I are going to consume in their market. So it's some version of this. It's a bell curve, right? Everything's a bell curve. Your grading distribution, but in life, everything's a bell curve. It sucks, but it is. and so what they have to do, they have to go out and predict the day ahead. Well, you know how hard to predict anything is? It's pretty damn hard. So anybody have an idea of a prediction of the score tomorrow? My point is, we'd have however many different opinions are right here, right? And I could place a bet on either side of that. So it's really hard. And these utilities, even though they're buying power for you and I, they don't know. They're still, honestly, it's you plus 10 years experience making that decision. Nothing against you or I, but that's still a tough decision. And so they have to go out, and anytime they miss it, right here, let's say the temperature goes up unexpectedly. So I asked the guy, Brian, when I took him to lunch at the feed barn today, I said, what's the temperature like tomorrow at 5 o'clock? He knew, because that's his job. But what if he's wrong? Are weather guys ever wrong?
Yes.
Okay, well, what happens when it gets hot? We all turn up the AC a little bit more, right? So I'm sorry about making the point overtly. I'm big with my emotions. But the point is that if you look, every now and then it spikes. It's a finite amount, but you know what it spikes to? They can buy it at around per megawatt hour. They can produce it on their generation that they own long term. They can buy it at around rough $40 megawatt hour. Well, the problem is when they go to the wholesale market, it doesn't just get hot here. It gets hot in Waco and in Dallas, and definitely in San Antonio. And so that means you got a lot of demand, supply and demand. They're not like this, they're like this. And so this little point, he's got to pay, they literally pay $3,000 a megawatt hour. That is a large multiple of that. I used to be able to do it in my head, but now I'm in Excel too much. But my point being is that little bitty spike costs them a ton of money, that unpredictability. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but at the end of the day, it costs money. And that's the important part. That's why business is so important. That's why you guys as engineers need to realize that it's great in a theory, it's great in a vacuum, it's great when we have an efficient market, but the world doesn't operate in an efficient market. The world operates in greed and business and lenders being really conservative. They won't give you any money. And utilities saying, pay, no, you gotta pay, I gotta pay less for your price. So I just want to make that very apparent to you. So anyhow, I don't want to, I think they told me I have till 7. So I'm getting near the end.
It's fine, I don't care.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go to chicken. So anyways, so this is a cheesy little graph, but a good thing with the new Office, at least new for me, is that they have all these smart arts you can put in and make really cool graphics. And it's the nice, it truly is. As you might have heard me say, that this engineering and policy economics, they continually move. You realize that it's less of a science and more of an art. It sounds really cheesy and feel-goody and Harvard-like, but it's so true. It is. It's more of an art. And here's why. These are power plants. Like we said, they got to get done over a long period of time. Ironically, the economics that support your great ideas, that's going to save the world and lower the cost of power for everyone and make you millions of dollars, are lended to from Matsu. He gives us, but he says, I need to know that the incomes are going to be there for 20 to 25 years. And furthermore, the policy that might support it, good, bad, or indifferent, regardless of whether it's oil and gas, needs to be there for an amount of time. So this is really kind of the cool part of where it all comes together. So the typical development process, and this is a wind project, but you could argue, you could literally insert any project in here, even outside of energy. But at the end of the day, this is a wind project. You've got, I'm not going to read from it, but you got a lot of things. That's a lot of things to manage. And oh, by the way, this is a PhD. This is a farmer, and maybe me. This is a PhD. That's a utility guy. That's a utility guy. That's a GE turbines. That's a construction guy who probably works at the construction science department who couldn't get into engineering. That's Matsu. That's another PhD. That's the policy guy who you hate, who takes poli sci as an attorney. And there's your environmentalist. And all that's a wind project. And oh, by the way, it takes 3 to 5 years to do. And only if we can commit Matsu to give us money. And Brad to buy the power. So anyways, here's a kind of a, what does it look like? So the wind business, this is just one really cool thing we do. But we use Google Earth a lot. It's really cool. If you haven't played with Google Earth, you can do a lot of customary things. And so we use Google Earth, and it literally looks like this in our little software program. It stacks up in layers, and at the end of the day, it's like those old picture books. If you ever saw like the medical books where you peel back the layers, it looks like that, and that's a power project when you put it all together. So it could be a skeleton or it could be a power project. At the end of the day, it's got a lot of layers like an onion. So not to get bored, but here's where some of the engineering comes in. This is really cool. So I'm very proud because I like graphics and I did all of this stuff. But this is a project down on the coast. Anybody from Corpus Christi or down that part of the world? No? Anybody know where Corpus Christi is?
Yes.
So it's right down over here. And there's an Alcoa power plant here. Ironically, Alcoa power plants, former Alcoa, it's now called Sherwin Alumina. That's the director of technology is an Aggie. They said, wow, we buy a lot of power, we buy it on the market, but we sit right on the bay and we own this spot over here for tailing ponds. We've got a resource sitting right in our own backyard and we own all this land. Why don't we look at putting some wind projects on it? So they hired another Aggie who has an engineering consulting firm, who's we pay a lot of money for, to validate that proposition. And we're trying to convince them as developers to try and let us develop this with them because there's a lot of expertise that they don't realize they don't know about yet. Now, you want to find the most expensive thing? It's the thing you don't know. And ask Matsu because he won't spend money against. So, anyways, this is what we do. This is we have some programs, and this is from a company called AWS TrueWind, and it gives us this output and it tells us what does the wind distribution look like. It's not quite as variable as you might think. Now, I know this. You can make anything look good if you scale it, right? In Excel. But at the end of the day, it's not as variable as you think, but it also tells us where's the direction of the wind coming from. And then that just kind of gives us a relevant point. What is the wind speed, the difference? That doesn't look like much, right? 7.0 to 7.3, but that's a $3 million difference on a wind project. Kind of important to have you engineers get it right? So anyways, another important thing. Do we have any double E's in the room? Really smart guys. That's where the good questions come from. My dad, I take him to breakfast. He's a double E, and he's like forgets more than I'll ever know about engineering. It's fascinating. So they have. It seems real simple to us dumb business guys. And I think Nicole said the engineering technology. I was an ID major, so I'm right below that. It's real simple to me. I'm like, here's the power plant. That you want to. Here's what's one of the consumer. You've got a bunch of land up here. Why don't we just build a transmission line? Well, it turns out there's farmers in between.